Hello and welcome to episode 315 of the Total Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. A huge thank you to our TSP Patreon community because we couldn't make the show each week without your loyal support. Coming up tonight on the podcast, a 91st minute equaliser, a real punch in the guts after, a much improved performance against an informed Crystal Palace side. We'll review yesterday's game. And as they say, Dr. Tottenham can make anybody feel good. But let's be honest, we're probably beyond help at the moment, aren't we? The trip to North London could be the relegation party, so we'll preview that game as well. My name is Martin Starke, and joining me this week are Steve Grant, who's the owner of Saints Web, and Glen Cour is writer of the blog League One -10. There's lots to get through tonight, so let's get started. I mean, essentially, we played a game, we scored a goal, we didn't lose. I mean, it's unfamiliar territory tonight, I'll be honest. 1-1 the final score against Crystal Palace at St Mary's. Glenn, going to start with you. Was that one of the best performances that we've seen this season?
Yeah, I guess so. It's a pretty low bar, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yes,
but yeah, we looked competent. We looked like we had a plan of how we were going to play. We weren't going to take too many risks. We were going to try and get forward quickly, be that directly up to Paul Amo-Ameyaw or breaking quickly sort of like down the wide areas. So it looked like we had a plan. It was pretty simple, but we've been sort of crying out for let's just do the simple things. Let's not. And that it seems the whole mood around, from the starting lineup to the way we played, it just seemed to be, we've been calling for obvious things to happen. Play with a striker, play with the fullbacks on the correct side, play with Downs and Ugachukwu in midfield because they're the only two that can do that role that we've got. Play a back three that doesn't have James Bree in it. And it was, the team looked fairly balanced. And, we talked about seeing the list of names or hearing the list of names when you sat in the car or whatever, and just not wanting to go to the game. I was in a horrific traffic jam when I heard the team news, and that's another story for anyone who came in from the east of the city. Ridiculous roadwork situation going on, but anyway. So heard the team news, thought, okay, it's not horrific, and the game was, the game was predictably, from that point of view, it was okay. The first half performance was decent. Obviously, we were ahead at half time. And I did have a bit of a moment which proved to be quite prophetic at half time, because I put a tweet out saying leave the substitutions as long as possible because whoever we bring on is going to make it weaker, and that unfortunately is what happened. But I mean, the first half, going back to the first half, I think Palace were a little bit sluggish. I think the upcoming semi-final, the emotion of their game at the weekend, I think they weren't at their best. But you could argue that we didn't let them be at their best. We won the midfield battle, which is massive. We haven't done that all season.
No.
The two lads in midfield I thought were tremendous. They, after the early scare when Mateta hit the bar, and obviously
was that 90 seconds, I think.
Yeah, it would have been completely different if that had gone in, obviously. But once we grew into the game, I thought Downs and Ugachukwu were outstanding in the centre of midfield. Just the energy, getting about the park, putting tackles in, breaking in front of the ball on occasions, just everything that midfielders are supposed to do. And obviously we had the big lad up front who, I mean, yes, he's clumsy as you like, and at times he looks like a total non-footballer, but he causes problems. And that was a really good goal. I love goals like that where it's just it sounds so basic, but the Fernandez picks up the ball, gets his head up, crosses it straight onto the big guy's head, and it's in the net. And that's that was all good. But
it was a bit slow motion though, wasn't it? Because you don't sit far away from me, do you? And I could just see it like, is it going to go over the line? Is it going to go over the line? And then
I mean, it wasn't a perfect header, and I think Henderson will probably feel he should have done better with it, having got a fairly decent hand to it. But no, it's never in doubt. It's always going in. Happy days. I'm sure we'll get on to the the substitutions and what went on in the second half. But But I didn't think there was much danger from Palace. They didn't seem to have, much going on in that second half. And but it only takes a moment, and whether the substitutions were all forced or whether they were made by decision by the manager, I kind of feel that the disruption that they caused meant that our marking for what turned out to be the equaliser was just terrible. I mean, I've seen people blaming Jack Stevens, but he had to come off his man to try and mark the unmarked guy in the middle, and because the midfield players hadn't dropped in, Harwood-Bellis was not in the middle, and it was just a mess, and it was just unfortunate that ended up in the net. And like with their goal, I think Ramsdale will possibly feel that he could have done better, having again got a hand to it. But I think that's harsh, to be honest. But it was a good header, and half an inch inside the post. But no, overall, we'd have taken a point at the start. I mean, I think our predictions were all heavy defeats.
Yeah, we were big in that, weren't we?
And even at half time, I think we'd have probably taken a draw. But it is disappointing to get to a few minutes from the end and then concede, obviously. So the quest for the Derby record carries on for a few more weeks at least.
Continues, yeah. I mean, is that the first time you've actually felt a bit gutted for them, Steve? Because I did. I've come away from the games and I felt angry before and frustrated. And actually, last night when I left, when that goal went in and everyone was leaving, I kind of felt bad for them because I thought they've actually put a shift in tonight. They deserved to get those 3 points.
Yeah, they'd worked hard for it, and you could see that there had been a lot of time spent on the training ground on being compact and shutting down space in certain areas, and obviously stopping the supply line into their key attacking players. I mean, Amo-Ameyaw was basically a non-event other than being flagged offside, I think 4 times in that first half. Other than that, yeah, Eza was on the ball every now and then, but there was never any kind of outlet for him until that last 5-10 minutes, really. Where, yeah, obviously, as Glen said, the subs kind of disjointed us a little bit. I mean, it did look as if kind of 4 of those 5 looked like they might all have some kind of knock. And obviously, Ugochukwu went down and came straight off. Onwuachu had been struggling for a while, but I mean, I think when he is the only guy up front and he's having to kind of do it all, I think it's fairly natural that someone like him will just naturally just be knackered with 10-15 minutes to go. And that's kind of where you would want a like for like. I mean, that was why it was quite kind of interesting that we'd heard kind of earlier in the week and at the weekend that Ross Stewart might be in contention for this one, even if it would obviously have just been a place on the bench. But you would think someone like him with his sort of physical attributes are probably the most aligned with Onwuachu than anybody else in the squad. So actually him would have been sort of a like-for-like replacement, and that would have been a little bit more ideal, I think. But I mean, you could only go with what you've got, and we had three centre-backs, a goalkeeper, and then 5 players who there was basically only one like-for-like sub in all 5 that we made, which was Wellington on for Manning. So yeah, it was a little bit disjointed by its nature, unfortunately. But even then, I mean, you got into injury time, and Palace never looked a threat.
Were you surprised by that? Did you think they were just looking a little bit leggy and a bit tired as well? Because I was expecting more of an onslaught, to be honest, and certainly after the first 90 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, as Glenn said, that obviously they had the big game on Saturday against Fulham, where, I mean, it wasn't really a 3-0 game. I didn't think, from what I saw of that, they had to work pretty hard for that result. And obviously they've got Brighton on at the weekend coming up. So sandwiched in between is a game that I think naturally they would put slightly less stock in. Whether it was a case of the players being leggy or underestimating us a little bit, perhaps that wouldn't be at all surprising. Because I mean, why would you expect anything out of a team that's got 9 points from 29 games? yeah, it's natural to kind of go into that game thinking, well, we could probably get away with playing at 70-80% here.
Yeah.
Problem being that if you do go behind, you're then struggling to kind of summon those reserves to kind of pick it back up again and go and kind of get back to the levels they were at. But also, I think the way that we played countered Palace's strengths quite well. We sat quite deep for a lot of the game. Palace don't want the ball as a general rule. They don't want to have 50-60% possession. They would rather have 30%, but basically be able to launch a really fast counter-attack from the centre of their half and catch other teams unaware. And obviously we know that we're particularly prone to those sort of counter-attacks, and actually we set ourselves up to negate those pretty well. I thought there were a couple of little breaks at various times, but we dealt with them reasonably well. I think the biggest chances for Palace came from our own individual mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, Bednarek obviously 90 seconds in, Bednarek gets caught trying to win the ball in the centre circle when didn't really need to be going for that. Gets turned and leaves 40 yards of space for Mateta to run into. And then again, when he's played that blind back pass and Ramsdale's bailed him out. So other than that, we didn't really let them create a huge amount, which for a team that's, I mean, as we mentioned on Sunday, that they've won six on the bounce away from home without conceding.
Yeah.
Oh, hello. See you later.
Steve's had enough. I'm sure he'll join us back in a minute. I was going to ask about Jack Stephens as well, Glenn, because obviously that was his first start since, I think, was it his first start since descending off? Because he's been out of the squad, hasn't he? He's had injuries as well. And you never quite know what you're going to get. But actually, I thought yesterday he was quite a calming influence at the back and to a certain extent what we've missed.
I thought Jack Stephens was very good. Yeah, I mean, it's always a bit of an intake of breath whenever you see him on the starting team sheet in a Premier League game. And obviously the last time he was chosen was the Harepool game, which is always forever going to be a bit of a blot in his copybook, really. But no, I thought he did well. He handled. I mean, Steve mentioned Ismail Assar not really doing very much, and that was because Stephens locked him up basically. There was that one superb tackle in the second half in the penalty area. Get that wrong, and it's a penalty. And Sarr was obviously frustrated. He was throwing his arms around, even though it was a perfectly fair tackle. That was good, and I felt like we weren't so panicky to clear the ball. There was a nice sort of balance between playing out and not taking any chances, and it's kind of how you wanted Russell Martin's team to play at the start of the season, to play out when it's on, but when it isn't, then don't do it, get rid of it. And I felt that Stephens certainly helped that. I think it was an interesting thing that Jurek said pre-game was about doing a lot of work with the players who weren't away on international duty. And obviously Stephens wasn't away. Bella Kotchap wasn't either, I assume. And obviously in training, Stephens has put his hand up because he's kind of leapfrogged Bella Kotchap in the queue to play yesterday, and justified his inclusion. So no, I think he had a decent game. But I mean, some people you've only got to listen. Just every time he's on the ball, someone's always moaning. Someone's always moaning. The guy.
People's positions are just entrenched now, aren't they? It is just what it is.
Yeah.
The guy behind me blames him for everything.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with criticising, when he does something brain dead like he did against Chelsea.
Put in someone's net,
you get criticised. But when he has a good game, I think you've got to recognise that, and he did have a good game. But the thing is with Jack, he's always been capable of having good games. But it's the consistency that he's never had. I mean, I've always had this thing about, the mark of a decent Premier League player is, can you play 3 games in a row at a decent level in the Premier League? I mean, that doesn't sound like it's too much to ask, but it's too much for a lot of our players.
Yeah,
a hell of a lot of them. And then obviously, I mean, to the other end of the spectrum, you've got someone like Virgil van Dijk who'll have 20 good games in a row or whatever. And that's what you've got to aspire to be as a central defender. And the likes of Harwood-Bellis is capable. He's the same. He's probably a little bit more consistent, but he needs to get more consistency in his game at Premier League level. But yeah, back to Jack. I think he had a decent game, and he deserves to stay in the side.
Someone else that had a good game, Steve, was Finn Downs. A few people saying that was his best game in a while. He was out of the team. He's found himself back in the team now. And unfortunately, he picked up another yellow card, didn't he? So he's going to miss the next 2 games. But that was a great performance from him last night.
Yeah, absolutely typical. We kind of wait for ages for him and Juric to patch things up and for him to kind of become a part of our midfield again. And he then goes and gets that booking, and I mean it was a good yellow to take when he took it. In fairness, so absolutely no problem with him getting booked for that. It was, I mean, the only criticism I'd have is do it 10 yards further, because he had a couple of nibbles at as the run came up, as the run sort of developed, and he waited until he was about 25-30 yards from goal before finally yanking him down. But yeah, he was very good, and that was exactly the sort of performance I think we were expecting from the summer when we signed him. Okay, you're not going to be on the ball as much as you were in the Championship, and you're certainly not going to have as much time. But we thought that his energy and his ability to kind of make those little darts in behind players to kind of almost spread the game out a little bit more. We thought that was going to be kind of a staple for him this season, and actually that last night, and I mean it's probably only that game and maybe Brighton away where we've really seen it. Obviously he scored in that game down at the Amex, and yeah, I mean he got himself into a couple of good positions first half, especially in the attacking sense, while second half was a little bit more restrained, a little bit more sort of let's try and control this. But it was very good from him, and yeah, obviously now an absolute massive pain in the arse that he's now going to be missing the next 2. So having worked for 2.5 weeks on this kind of almost double pivot of a central midfield pairing, we're now going to have to go back to the drawing board and find someone else to sit alongside Big Les for the next 2, unfortunately.
I know you mentioned the subs, Glen, but do you think him going off was the point of difference? Is that the one that you kind of highlight as that's the issue?
Well, again, I question whether Downs could have carried on. I mean, Ivan Juric always makes 5 subs. It seems, no matter what. I mean, I'm sure someone's got the stats out there somewhere. It always seems like he makes 5, almost as a matter of course. I didn't think he needed to. If Downs was injured, then fair enough. But to me, he was still on his feet. There were 10 minutes to go. He's banned for the next 2 games. Keep him going. Yeah. He's a major part of the screen in front of the back 3, and the equalising goal came from an area that Downs defends at set place, which is just in front of that near post. So I don't think it helped. I could have understood it more if he'd brought on, I think we had centre-backs on the bench. Even if he brought Bella Kotchap on and stuck him in midfield and say, do that role. But he brought Sugawara on for reasons unknown, put him on the left wing, put Fernandes back in midfield. And if you watch when the cross comes in from Lerma, Harwood-Bellis is out of position because he's headed the ball out
twice.
He's had to go and edit twice because he had it up in the air the first time. So that's not great. But when a centre-back goes out, your central midfielder is supposed to drop back in, and both Downs on the left and Ugachukwu on the right were doing that quite effectively when players went forward in open play. But no one dropped in when Harwood-Bellis went out. And if you look at the positioning of Fernandes and Aribo, they're both sort of like over towards where Lerma is when he crosses the ball. And there's just a lack of bodies, lack of defenders in the middle when Franco is completely free. And I just think that the disruption caused by that substitution, I said before, it only takes a second at Premier League level for you to think, oh, where am I? and it's that old thing about making a substitution and make 3 or 4 positional changes as a result. I just don't think it helped. But it's unfortunate, and if it was an injury, then fair enough. But I still think it could have been handled better. And I think Sugawara was completely the wrong player to bring on in that scenario. 1-0 up, 90th minute or whatever. There didn't seem to be much danger from Palace. They'd started taking the long throws because they were getting desperate. And we could have done with another 6'3" lump in there just to head the ball away, especially given that Tall Paul and Les had already gone off. So I think could have been handled better.
I thought the crowd played their part as well last night, Steve. Wasn't the biggest attendance of the season. There was plenty of empty seats near me, and as Glen said, traffic problems last night. This would have been the perfect opportunity to stay at home and give it a miss. But I thought the atmosphere was spot on from the start.
Yeah, I mean, given all those, as you say, and obviously what people have had to put up with this season, 9 defeats on the bounce at home. And yeah, you come into a midweek game where, I mean, we know mathematically we had basically 2 games potentially before it's all confirmed and signed, sealed, and delivered. Yeah. So yeah, I can completely understand that a load of people would just say, "Oh, I can't be asked for this." Apparently, the club the ticket office were ringing round people who didn't go last night.
Oh, really?
Sort of surveying and
bizarre, isn't it?
Apparently, sort of offering discounted corporate stuff and all this sort of stuff.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I feel sorry for the poor saps in the ticket office who have clearly been told that that's what they've got to do.
Yeah,
because frankly, some of the stuff they're likely to have been subjected to on that telephone conversation is, probably not going to be particularly pleasant, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, the crowd played its part, and at the end of the day, when you see a team that looks like it's in a good shape and has a game plan and looks like it's well prepared for it, then yeah, there's something there to support, and the atmosphere was decent for the most part. I mean, Palace fans went very quiet second half, just because, I mean, I think they probably thought, they would, if that game had finished on 91 minutes at 1-0, I think you'd have had basically every Palace fan would have been walking out of that away end saying we could have played till the weekend and we wouldn't have scored.
Yeah.
Because they just never looked like getting anywhere near it, and that's why it's just so immensely frustrating. That, I mean, that was one of those games where, like 5-6 years ago, where we were just a doddering mid-table Premier League side. You'd have the halcyon days,
the glory days.
You'd have those games all the time where you're comfortable against a team that's not particularly good, hasn't really created anything of any note, and then suddenly you switch off for 1 second in the last 5 minutes, and suddenly they've burgled a point from you, and that's kind of exactly how it feels. I mean, it's been a while since we felt like that. In terms of, well, actually being the better team in the game for a start, but also, feeling like, especially at home, where you're kind of supposed to make the running and this, that, and the other, and we've not been able to do it for all kinds of different reasons. But yeah, last night, I think everybody probably felt that we should have won, probably just about deserved to win. I mean, we didn't create huge amounts of chances, other than a couple of occasions where we kind of forced Palace into playing a terrible, dangerous pass across their penalty area, but just couldn't quite take advantage. But overall, yeah, I think fans played a part, and I think Harwood-Bellis was kind of specifically pointed that out in one of the post-match interviews, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And it is a little bit, some of the post-match interviews just seemed a bit more positive, Glenn. I don't know. I was going to just say, how do we make sure that we've got 8 more positive performances? But it seemed to me like they'd had a bit of almost like a bit of a reset, and kind of like, right, let's just try and get past 11 points and let's try and save a bit of face here. And that seemed to be the kind of the motivation, if you like. I just hope that they can keep it up.
Yeah, I mean it's an embarrassing target to have, isn't it? As a season's aim to get more than the worst Premier League team in history. But I think it's quite good in a way that, after I mean, it was long gone. It's been long dead. But after the Wolves game, there was an admission for the first time, really, within the club that we were dead and buried, and there wasn't much to play for apart from not being absolutely humiliated. So
did you see the quote this week? I think you did. We have the goal to be not the worst team in the Premier League history.
Yeah,
the second bit that got me though is let's see what we will do.
It's
not even almost committing to that.
No.
Yeah, it's almost like you're saying the quiet bit out loud that you shouldn't really be saying. And Ivan Jurek has got a habit of doing that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to have got that done yesterday, so then we could have stopped talking about it and just concentrated on the last 8 games, and they would have been what they are, which is basically preparation for next season, trying to finish on some sort of positive, and so people are actually looking forward to next season. I think that was something that Taylor Harwood-Bellis said, which is interesting coming from him, because the chances of him being there. Chances of him being there are not particularly high. But
with his new agent.
Yeah, with his new agent and his new hairstyle and all that. So yeah, so no, it is what it is. I would have liked to have got the Derby talk out of the way, and then been able to concentrate on the last few games. But I think I mean, obviously we stand a very high chance of getting relegated on Sunday, and that will that will sort of like dominate the talk, and then we'll see what happens after that. But I saw enough from us yesterday to think that there will be some more games. I think if we set up and play like that against Leicester, for example, there's no reason why we shouldn't take 3 points, given how bad they are. They're probably actually worse than us at the moment. So yeah, it would be nice to go into that game and play the same way. But we do have to have all of our key players fit and available. Otherwise, we saw what happens when you dip into the number 15, 16 and 17 in the squad. It certainly weakens things.
Yeah. I think we'll do Player of the Week on Sunday after the Spurs game. Is there anything else on Palace? I saw that I think we've dropped 25 points from winning positions in the Premier League now. Obviously the most of any side, just to kind of like compound the misery. Anything else from Wednesday night?
I mean, that kind of stat is misleading in so many ways, isn't it? But I mean, it does show that we've competed in games, in that we've led in a hell of a lot of games.
Yeah. You got your glass half full.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you look back at games where we've led at half time, and not gone on to win. So obviously last night, in the end, Ipswich, Leicester, and of course Man United, and Liverpool. So I mean, some of those drop points are more forgivable than others. I mean, the Man United one, frankly, was probably the worst of the lot, the way that came about. But I mean, no team ever holds the lead in every game. Liverpool haven't been able to do it, and they're comfortably the best team in the country this season. So it's I mean, having the lead and not keeping it isn't the be all and end all. It's not kind of a stat that kind of underlines everything of why we are where we are. Ultimately, the number of really crap goals that we concede is probably much higher up the list on that one. But yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, if we're able to be as organised and keep the concentration for 98 rather than 91 minutes going forward for the rest of the season, then I think there should be kind of that sense of cautious optimism that we'll at least get beyond Derby's points record, and therefore it then will finally stop being a talking point.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah. I've got one more thing actually from yesterday. A few people on social media are very quick to jump on the bandwagon with this one. Tyler Dibbling was come on as a sub and was not great. And there seems to we've had this chat before about homegrown players and academy players getting judged more harshly than certain other players. And if you think Tyler Dibbling is in any way to blame for the team being rubbish this season, I think you need to give your head a wobble. At the end of the day, he's a 19-year-old coming into a very poor Premier League team. And the way we were set up under Russell Martin, where we were basically very, very slow in our progression up the pitch, that suited him because he would get the ball on the half term and he would inject pace into the attack, and we'd go from slow to quick, and he would get away from and get in front of his defender and stuff like that. Under Jurek, we're now playing a different way, where we're either banging the ball up to tall Paul, or we are trying to play, quickly and play the ball in front of the wingers to run onto and things like that. That doesn't really suit him. It doesn't mean to say it will always not suit him. It's just he's a 19-year-old finding his way in the game in his first season. So I think people need to cut him a little bit of slack. And I don't really expect him to start many games between now and the end of the season, to be honest. It would be nice to see him, back to how he was at the start of the season. But I don't think the way we're playing, or the way that Jurek wants us to play, is really going to play to his strengths. And it's no different really to trying to play the ball in front of Paul Amo-Ameyaw and expecting him to run onto it. It's just not his strength. So I just think cut the guy a little bit of slack. And I don't think, I've seen people blaming him for us letting in a goal last night. I mean, it's ridiculous. That was another substitution. I mean, him coming on didn't help because it took Sulemana off as well. So we lost that outlet ball, where Sulemana could sort of worry them with his pace. So basically, it meant that Palace defenders could step up a little bit more. Yeah, and that didn't help either. And the other substitution that didn't help was when Aribo came on, because I think he touched the ball 3 times perhaps and didn't get a tackle in, and that was a problem as well. So I think there are other areas to look at before you look at what Tyler Dibbling did or didn't do yesterday.
It's a good point, well made, and let's just enjoy him while he's still here, I guess. Let's move on to the weekend. Russell Martin was sacked after that 5-0 home defeat against Tottenham Hotspur. There's a real chance that the same thing might happen again if they're waiting for relegation to be confirmed before they get rid of the manager. Steve, I guess all eyes are going to be on Wolves at the weekend. So if we lose, Wolves win, that's kind of it, isn't it, after 31 games?
Yes, I think if we get a draw, it kind of prolongs the agony just on a technicality from a sort of goal difference perspective. But yeah, if Wolves win, it's basically done.
And they're playing Ipswich, we should point out.
Yeah, they are. But of course, Ipswich went and took advantage of Bournemouth deciding that their season's done. I mean, they've completely blown up in the last sort of 5-6 weeks, haven't they? And basically since they beat us. They've not won since. So yeah, they've collapsed, and Ipswich took advantage. I mean, it will still be too little, too late. But if Ipswich win at Wolves, all of a sudden, I mean, the gap would then be down to, I think, 6 points. Which, I mean, it's not insurmountable. You'd still expect that. I mean, from what we've seen of Ipswich performances this calendar year, I mean, that win last night was their first win since Christmas. So yeah, you would still expect that Ipswich aren't going to get enough points to kind of close the gap at all. But I mean, at least if they win at the weekend, then it keeps things interesting. But I would expect Wolves. I mean, they seem to be a lot more. They seem to be a smarter team away from home. I think they're quite street smart. I mean, their record away isn't great, but they're playing against a team who are frankly rubbish. So they'll go to Portman Road, and they will expect to kind of at least partly make the running, I would imagine. Even I think Cunha's still suspended, isn't he? So they're going to have to do it without him. But they've put a couple of wins sort of back to back without him, albeit against us and West Ham. So yeah, maybe they don't maybe he's not quite so vital against the weaker teams.
And they play Saturday afternoon, don't they? So we will know
yes.
by the
So
time we go.
yes, we'll know what's happening by the time we turn up at White Hart Lane on Sunday lunchtime.
Brilliant. I mean, they've had their injuries this season, haven't they, Glenn?
Cross and don't know what to tell everybody about it.
I mean, it has played a part in their inconsistencies, but at the moment, it looks like they've got a pretty fully fit squad and raring to go.
But ultimately, it makes no difference with Tottenham whether they've got injuries or whether they haven't. I mean, Postecoglou's the latest to take the poison chalice. And, they got something like the 10th highest spend, and they expect top 4 every year, and then a surprise when they don't get it and sack the manager. It's I've admired his approach at trying to sort of change the narrative at Spurs and try and make them not so obsessed with Arsenal and things like that. But he's on a hard into nothing. They're still Spursy, regardless of how many how many players they've got injured or not. Postecoglou seems to be another, we're going to play my way, whether I've got the players to play it or not. Plan A, and if plan A don't work, then try plan A again. So, they've obviously got some very good players, and they demolished the hell out of us at St Mary's when we collectively stopped running for 45 minutes, and that was the end of Russell Martin. I keep hearing that Son Heung-min's having a bad season and that he's washed and that's the end of him and stuff. But I guarantee he will score on Sunday because he always does against us. It must be incredibly frustrating being a Tottenham fan, especially now they got the new ground, so they got the increased income from that. But it won't make any difference as long as Daniel Levy's there, and it's almost as if they're waiting for him to die before they can move on. If they don't know by now that they're not going to go anywhere with this guy in charge, then they never will. And they obviously wasted the years when they had the guaranteed 30 goal a season striker, which is worth its weight in gold in the Premier League. And obviously had Harry Kane, and they had Son chipping in 25 goals as well. And they still couldn't build a team that was really challenging for the league. So very good team on paper. And I'm sure they'll be far too good for us, especially I worry about, to keep talking about the midfield in our team and how vital it is to have Downs and Ugachukwu. There's a good chance we won't have either of them. Well, Downs we definitely won't have. But if Ugachukwu injured, and that didn't look too clever the way he came off. Hopefully he's just got a kick and it's and it will recover. But if he doesn't play as well, then what we got in the centre of midfield, it's probably a Rebo and some sort of combination of a Rebo, Fernandez, Smallbone, Lallana. And good luck. Wow. So it's I don't go into this game with much hope, put it that way. And I think Spurs, they've got too many good players for us to cause an upset, I feel. But unless they, obviously have a complete nightmare tonight against playing Chelsea, aren't they? Kicking off in about 20 minutes. So
they are,
hopefully they'll have a really tough game and maybe pick up a few knocks. But I think
so. Your gut feeling
be too strong for us
going into the weekend is that it'll all be done and dusted Sunday night.
I'm not convinced Wolves will beat Ipswich.
Okay, to
be honest, because it's the last chance saloon for Ipswich. So I just think, they know if they lose this game, they're done. So I think they will go for it. I would have if Ipswich had lost to Bournemouth yesterday, I would have thought they'll just roll over and Wolves will win comfortably. But I just have a feeling that they might get something out of that game, simply because they have to. Wolves seem to, they seem to over celebrate when they beat us, like that was a guarantee that they were going to stay up. So Ipswich might get something out of that. So I think it might limp on one more week, but I don't think we'll do ourselves any favours in that regard this weekend. And I'll do my score prediction now, and it's 3-0 to Tottenham.
I was going to say the same, actually. Steve, is it the same for you with like Flynn Downs missing? Is it just kind of like straight swap? Joe Aribo comes in. Is that the only change that you would make? That he does like to think with things, doesn't he? So we played all right, which probably means he's going to make a few changes.
Well, yeah. I mean, Yeah, I mean the Rasmus Ankerson tactic of if it ain't broke, consider breaking it. It's I mean, you would like to think that the vast majority of those who started last night would keep their place on the basis of having earned it. But of course, I mean, we'll see what turns up in terms of medical reports and stuff like that. Obviously, we know Downs is out suspended. I mean, in terms of who replaces him, I mean, you're not sport for choice, are you?
No.
We're assuming Smallbone probably isn't going to be fit to start, if at all.
Certainly not 100%. You would think.
No. So I don't think you'd want him starting against a team like Spurs, who, if they do build up a head of steam, they're kind of a bit of a force, aren't they, through midfield? So I think you need a little bit of strength and a little bit of pace in there, which obviously makes zero sense when we're then suggesting it's going to be Joe Aribo to plug that gap. But it is a case of needs must, and he's probably the kind of next cab off the rank for that position, I guess. We don't really have anybody else who immediately springs to mind who would be sort of defensive minded enough to be able to play there. Grönbeck is obviously a lot more attack minded and seems to have some sort of unspecified tendon issue. So I wouldn't imagine he'll be fit for Sunday anyway. And I mean, judging by recent performances, we'd rather not have Matty Fernandes playing deep anyway, because that then completely nullifies
taken off half time. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but also it nullifies the attacking threat that he poses, because I mean, him linking up with Sulemana and Onuachu is basically our main route now, isn't it? It's relatively one-dimensional, but I mean, relatively effective last night, I guess. But yeah, in terms of that lineup, I would like to think we won't change an awful lot other than what's forced. But yeah, we'll see what turns up from the medical reports and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a difficult one. Ordinarily, going to Spurs, you wouldn't be in any kind of positive mood anyway. We've not got a particularly great record there. But two of the teams that have won at White Hart Lane this season are Ipswich and Leicester.
Wow, there we go.
They've both won 2-1 at White Hart Lane this season.
Let's click on. Is that a score prediction from you?
It might be.
Of course it isn't.
Why not? Let's go full Spursy and go for a 2-1 Saints win, just for why not? Just prolong it all for another week, because then we're not even the sole owner of the record of the sort of fastest relegation either. So yeah, I mean it's done, isn't it? But let's
it could potentially
drag it out.
And you think maybe like with the Ipswich Wolves thing as well, you think it might go on for another week after this?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, you could basically pull a result out of the hat for Wolves Ipswich, and I wouldn't be surprised either of the three ways. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's, who knows. Let's keep it interesting for a bit.
All right.
I mean, last thing we want really is like a month and a half of games where they literally mean nothing. So yeah, why not?
I do wonder though, like if it is confirmed at the weekend, whether we get the manager leaving on Monday morning, and we'll have an emergency podcast Monday night, all that kind of stuff, and then we can actually start to plan for next season. And I don't know. Who knows? If you are watching the live stream, make sure you put your score predictions in the comments. Anything else on Spurs? Are you going to this one, Steve?
Yes. Yeah. Horrible Sunday lunchtime kickoff. So I'm assuming the trains and or various other public transport's going to be.
And I assume that's just because they're playing tonight. It's not on telly, is it? It's no
correct. Yeah.
Interest in this game. It's just the fact that they've got a game tonight. So.
Yeah, so we can thank TNT for that one.
Yeah, marvellous. Thanks very much. Right, anything else? I think we've covered quite a lot because we had the one on Sunday, didn't we, in the pod tonight? Any other bits just before we get into the weekend?
No, I mean, the only other thing, I mentioned it already, whoever decides on the roadworks on the east of the city, just, for God's sake, I mean, the big ones.
Well, you're coming to the end of the year's budget, aren't you? Spend it all.
Yeah. So you got the road blocked in Bitten. The way round it is West End Road, which has traffic lights on it. The M287's knackered as well. It's just an absolute shambles. I mean, I was sort of like happy briefly on the way to the game. I thought I might miss some of it, but I did actually did actually get there on time. But it would.
Well, you can imagine if people had got in like 90 seconds in, the first thing they see is Mateta smashing that one against the crossbar.
It's a hell of a hit.
You're having a load of people enacting that Abe Simpson meme where he walks in, hangs his hat up on the hat stand, turns around, picks it back up, puts it on, and walks straight back out the door again.
Yeah.
But it was quite a hit. That you'd have probably heard that from outside, to be fair. So you didn't stick around for the 25% off draft beer they were doing in the pub afterwards. Then I thought they were that was a bit wishful thinking, trying to get people to stay till 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I mean, you got no chance for a midweek game.
No,
it was like that Spurs game, the one where Russell Martin got sacked. They ended up they pre-poured loads of pints, like about 1,000 pints, thinking that people were going to stick around. I mean, half the crowd had left at half time, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a lot of sort of joined up, muddled thinking here going on with some of these initiatives. That like the initiatives would be good. Like if it was a Saturday evening, then yeah, by all means do that, and people will stick around for it if the weather's nice, like it's been the last few days.
Yeah.
But yeah, late evening game. Midweek, it's no chance.
I mean, I guess they are sort of finding their way with all the, with the Del Bar and stuff like that, and the fan zones and what people are going to stick around for. But they do seem to be a little bit tone deaf. It's like the people ringing season ticket holders. Why didn't you go to the game? Why didn't you go to the game? We've got a bar and a fan zone and a big fluffy dog. It's like at the end of the day, it's the product on the pitch that brings people, and I think we've discussed this before about evening games where the carnage of trying to get to the game with people working and transport costs and parking around St Mary's not being great and all that sort of stuff. I just think if you add in the team being generally garbage this season and having lost 8 home games in a row or whatever, I totally get why people don't turn up. I know the official gate was 29,300 and something, but if you think that many were in the ground, Cloud Cookery Land, it was between 25 and 26 at the most. There was just a hell of a lot of gaps all over right from the start. And I know, a sold season ticket counts as a bum on seat in terms of attendance, but there was a lot of people not there. So yeah, they need to realise that the results of the first team and the performance of the first team really underpins everything. At the club, and without that, everything else is going to struggle. And with that, you will sell 1,000 pints after the game, and if things are going well. But yeah, there you go. So I'm sure they'll sell a few more next season when we're hopefully winning a few games.
We'll win a couple of games, yeah. So potentially it's going to be quite a pivotal weekend then. Let's all stay together. You can follow us on social media platforms. It's at Total Saints Pod. Share any thoughts from the weekend, anything you want to get off your chest. Check out the merch store as well online, shop.totalsaints.co.uk. We've added loads of new lines. If you missed the podcast at the weekend, there's a new pint glass on there, Glenn.
Oh yeah,
there you go. Glass half empty.
Glass half empty today. Glass almost totally empty. There you go.
You can grab one of those if you want online. As I mentioned earlier, you'll also find us on Patreon. That's where you can support the podcast with the monthly contributions. It's patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. Now, each of the tiers comes with different perks, including some shouts for patrons in the Francis Benali and the Mick Shannon tier. So thank you to Roll of Honour Time, Dave Melton, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyer, and James Kibbe. They're all in our Francis Benali tier. And also thank you to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Nick Hingston, Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Phil Horstrup, Matt Hall, Mark Littlewood, Mike Etheridge, James Bobin, John Bevan, and Liam Dempsey, who are in our Mick Shannon tier. Thank you as well to Paul Castle Associates and Steamtown Brewery for sponsoring TSP this season. Thank you to Glenn and to Steve. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. Enjoy the weekend.